Okay, so let us talk about how messed up the US is. And by messed up, in this case, I'm going to read an article titled Mexico Decriminalizes Abortion, Extending Latin American Trend of Widening Access to Procedure. Now, that's why I think that the US is totally messed up with their laws. Because these are very Catholic countries. These are very religious countries. And yet they recognize that women are human beings. So why are we backsliding here? But anyway, to the article. Mexico's Supreme Court threw out all federal criminal penalties for abortion Wednesday, ruling that national laws prohibiting the procedure are unconstitutional and violate women's rights in a sweeping decision that extended Latin America's trend of widening abortion access. The High Court ordered that abortion be removed from the federal penal code. The ruling will require the Federal Public Health Service and all federal health institutions to offer abortion to anyone who requests it. Which is awesome. Because, again, abortion is health care, and it's nobody's frickin' business what type of health care a woman is receiving, or anyone is receiving. This is not up for debate. You do not get to decide any other medical procedures, so why are you deciding that some strangers should decide on this medical procedure just because it gives you the ick? Is it icky? Yes. Yes, it is. But that should not be a reason why you prevent other people from having it. Because there are plenty of things that give me the ick. I'm not going to rail against it because I know not everyone's me. So, unless you're hurting someone else, which in this case, that even if you were to say this someone else exists, it exists literally inside the woman and cannot at this point exist outside the woman. So, yeah, basically this is still part of her body, and if she wants it removed, that's up to her. And most of the time, it's not like this sounds like it's going to be abortion on demand. People who need an abortion aren't exactly skipping to the hospital like it's going to the corner store for milk. It's because they've agonized over this. It's not something that they just, I decided I'm going to have an abortion. No, that's not how this works. Anyway, no woman or pregnant person nor any health worker will be able to be punished for abortion, the Information Group for Chosen Reproduction, known by its Spanish initials GIRE, said in a statement. Some 20 Mexican states, however, still criminalize abortion. While judges in those states will have to abide by the court's decision, further legal work will be required to remove all penalties. Still a good start. Celebration of the ruling soon spilled out onto social media. Today is a day of victory and justice for Mexican women. Mexico's National Institute for Women wrote in a message on the social media platform X, formerly known as Twitter. Just as an aside, I saw someone calling it instead of Twitter, they just removed the T and put an X. So, the TW, and put an X. So it basically read shitter, which, the way things are going on that platform, yeah, that checks out. The government organization called the decision a big step toward gender equality. Exactly. Senator Olga Sanchez Cordero a former Supreme Court justice, that's unusual, okay, applauded the ruling, saying on X that it represented an advance towards a more just society in which the rights of all are respected. She called on Mexico's Congress to pass legislation in response. Now, again, it's a medical procedure. This should not be about women's rights. This should be about it's a medical procedure. It just happens to be exclusive to women and some trans men. But at the end of the day, this shouldn't be about women's rights. This should be about the right to privacy of being able to get the medical procedures that you need. Because like I mentioned before, this doesn't happen with any other medical procedure. Men do not have to go through this when they have a vasectomy. They don't have to go through this when they order Viagra. They don't have to go through this in any respect. But women have to go through hoops to get an abortion if she needs it, or even get contraception. Apparently, contraception is this big bugaboo too, which technically men can do that. Men can do contraception. It's called a condom. Why is this only a woman's thing? Why are people treating it as just a woman's thing? Going to the OBGYN, going to a gynecologist, that's a doctor for female issues. But nobody, the only part of that that's regulated is abortion. I mean, I'm convinced there are some men out there who honestly believe that that is the only thing a gynecologist does. Which, hello, obstetrics, hi. But others in the highly religious country decried the decision. Irma Barrientos, director of the Civil Association for the Rights of the Conceived, oh boy, said opponents will continue the fight against expanded abortion access. Okay. All right. Being conceived is not a great what's the word I'm looking for? Great accomplishment, because miscarriages happen. All sorts of things can happen in a pregnancy. So just being conceived does not mean that that conception will go to term. Even if nobody ever had an abortion for any reason, these bad things will continue to happen. You can have a miscarriage, you can have an ectopic pregnancy. There are plenty of ways that this conception will not become viable. So, yeah, being conceived is not an accomplishment. It's not the end all be all that these people think that it is. And the people who do tell me that they know shit about women's health. They've never talked to a pregnant person before in their lives. Probably if they are, and in this case, it sounds like this is a woman, probably has never been pregnant and never talked to someone who is pregnant, because I've never been pregnant either. But I respect those who have experienced pregnancy and then tell me how hard it is. I respect that, because that I've never had that experience, so I can't interject my own. So I can only go by what other people say. And some people seem to think that Their experience is their experience, is everybody's experience. And so if their experience is one thing, then nobody else should have a different one. We're not going to stop, Barrientos said. Let's remember what happened in the United States. Great. After 40 years, the Supreme Court reversed its abortion decision. And we're not going to stop. I'm sorry, it's been 50 years, but whatever. We're not going to stop until Mexico guarantees the right to life from the moment of conception. Are you happy now, United States? Assholes in other countries are looking to us as to how to be better assholes. The court said on X that the legal system that criminalized abortion in Mexican federal law was unconstitutional because it violates the human rights of women and people with the ability to gestate. Now, first off, what that other woman who seems to think being conceived is some sort of special thing, she was fighting for the rights of the conceived in a country where up until now abortion was illegal. Why were you fighting for something that wasn't happening? Is what I'd like to know. I mean, now, once, maybe if they were afraid of these other groups who are fighting for abortion access, maybe that group coming together then. But unless that was the goal, what does a country need a group like that for? So obviously this is a bunch of, so this sounds like that they're either in reaction to to groups of people who were fighting for abortion access, or they were just people who want to be martyrs of something. Anyway, the court said on X, oh wait, that's the other thing. Now, how can the fact that the court said it violates the human rights of women and people with the ability to gestate, that is the thing that a lot of these forced birthers seem to forget. They claim to be pro-life, which is why I do not use the term pro-life. Because they claim to be pro-life, but they couldn't give two shits about the pregnant person. They don't give a shit about that person. They just care about a lump of cells which may become a viable birth. So, and then once that viable birth happens, they again fail to give a shit about the actual living, breathing child. So, yeah, that's why I call them forced birthers instead of pro-life, because if they were truly pro-life, they would give a shit about the fact that sometimes things go horribly wrong. But they don't. Actually, they don't really care about the health of the fetus, because if the fetus isn't even viable, they demand that the fetus still be born, even though it could be stillborn or die within minutes or hours of birth because not viable. So they just give a shit about punishing women for daring to get pregnant, for daring to have sex, rather than treating pregnancy like it should be, which is a beautiful thing. Because if they truly treated it like it was a beautiful thing, then they would accept that once it becomes an ugly chapter, that they would accept that it should stop. So anyway, the decision came 2 years after the court ruled that abortion was not a crime in one northern state. That ruling set off a slow state-by-state process of decriminalizing it. Last week, the central state of, oh boy, Aguascalientes, nailed it, became the 12th state to drop criminal penalties. Abortion rights activists will have to continue seeking legislation state by state, though Wednesday's decision should make that easier. State legislatures can also act on their own to erase abortion penalties. Okay. If it's unconstitutional, at least in the United States, if something is unconstitutional, federal law supersedes state law. Do they not have that in Mexico? In which case, why have both federal and state laws? Anyway, whatever. For now, the ruling does not mean that every Mexican woman will be able to access the procedure immediately, explained Fernanda Diaz de Leon, subdirector and legal expert for women's rights group IPAS. What it does do, in theory, is obligate federal agencies to provide the care to patients. That's likely to have a cascade of effects, which is good because, again, it's healthcare. And nobody else's business except the woman, possibly her family, and her doctor. Otherwise, if you don't personally know the woman and you're not personally affected by this, none of your damn business. Diaz de Leon said removing the federal ban takes away another excuse used by care providers to deny abortions in states where the procedure is no longer a crime. That implies that she's suggesting that some doctors just are, forced birthers, and they were just using this as a shield. It'll be very interesting to see how many doctors would be willing to provide abortion care now that they no longer have that shield. Because I personally know of at least one doctor in my area, actually he's long retired I think, who would never perform an abortion. But at least he was honest about it, so. And he still didn't, even though, there was no law against it. He still didn't, but he would, but the woman had options to be punted to a different doctor. It also allows women with formal employment who are part of the Social Security system and government employees to seek the procedure in federal institutions in states where the abortion is still criminalized, she said. Diaz de Leon and the officials at other feminist organizations worry that women, particularly in more conservative areas, may still be denied abortions. Right, because people are dicks. It is a very important step, Diaz de Leon said, but we need to wait to see how this is going to be applied and how far it reaches. Across Latin America, countries have made moves to lift abortion restrictions in recent years, a trend often referred to as a green wave, a reference to the green bandanas carried by women protesting for abortion rights in the region. The changes in Latin America stand in sharp contrast to increasing restrictions on abortion in parts of the United States. Some American women were already seeking help from Mexican abortion rights activists to obtain pills used to end pregnancies. Mexico City was the first Mexican jurisdiction to decriminalize abortion 15 years ago. After decades of work by activists across the region, the trend picked up speed in Argentina, which in 2020 legalized the procedure. In 2022, Colombia, a highly conservative country, did the same. The U.S. Supreme Court last year overturned Roe v. Wade, the 1973 ruling that provided a right to abortion nationwide. Since then, most states led by conservative lawmakers and governors have adopted bans or tighter restrictions. Which I'm really, really hoping that's going to seriously bite them in the ass. The fact that the U.S. government is politically divided makes a nationwide ban or legislation unlikely, at least in the short term. And please, 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 in the long term. And this isn't a. Now, they frame it as a partisan issue, but it's not even that. Most Republicans are pro choice. Like in Kansas, when abortion was on the ballot in this conservative state, it failed. The abortion ban failed because most people understand that it's a necessary evil. Nobody goes into this wanting to have an abortion or wanting to perform abortions. This is always a last resort, and it is not up to people outside of the woman's circumstance to tell that woman what she should do, because you do not know what her needs are. So, and these are the same people who I swear would bitch and moan if this person was on welfare and they were popping out kids. These people would be the same who would claim, well, why is she having all these kids? Because you're taking away her ability not to, you dipshits. Currently, abortion is banned throughout pregnancy, with limited exceptions in 15 American states. Bans in 2 more states forbid abortion after cardiac activity can be detected, which my understanding is that's a bit of a misnomer, but okay. Generally around 6 weeks into pregnancy, and often before women know they are pregnant. Judges have put enforcement of restrictions on hold in at least 4 additional states. Meanwhile, states with liberal governments have taken steps to try to protect abortion access. Observers in Mexico agreed that it would take time to see how Wednesday's ruling is applied. In the southern state of Guerrero, Maria Reina, director of the Guerrero Association Against Violence Toward Women, cautioned that challenges would persist. Oh yeah, of course. Her state decriminalized abortion last year, but there are 22 open investigations against women accused of ending their pregnancies. There is still a lot of resistance, she said. Yeah, bigotry and hatred are very hard to combat against, because people do not want to learn new things. They don't want to be told that women are human beings, or that this is healthcare and none of your goddamn business. They don't want to be told that. They just see women as these horrible people that, well, because they do horrible things, of course they get pregnant, and we've got to punish them for it. Because I can't imagine if you actually thought of women as respectable human beings, why you would deny them health care. Why you would deny them what they feel is right for them. Because this is not something where you just, go skipping to the corner store and buying milk. This is a medical procedure. And women get it for all sorts of reasons. And it is not up to some dipshit with nothing better to do than harass women to tell women, what is an acceptable reason for an abortion. Because in their mind, there is no acceptable reason for an abortion. Because they can't even begin to understand what a person's life is like. They cannot begin to understand what their pregnancy is like, what their general life is like. And because they have no empathy whatsoever, they only can see how their life is or how they would respond to something because it's a hypothetical and not reality for them. Of course, you're going to think that you're going to do things that, given a situation, you probably would do the same thing. Because they have no empathy, they are harassing women, and they have decided that they know better than the woman how she should live her life. And no, no. So yes, even those Democrats who are forced birthers, even though their general reasonings might be different, their stated reasonings, at the end of the day, anybody who tells a woman who they have no contact with, no relation to, that what she should do with her life and her body, no, no, that doesn't make you a good person. And I do not care if you're generally a Democrat, except for this one issue. You are saying that a potential human life is more important to you than an actual one, which does not make you pro-life. It makes you forced birth. And I really don't care what you claim is your reasoning for why you don't think abortion should be legal. Because pro-choicers are not exactly saying, oh, goody, 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 we can have an abortion now. This is something that women are not going into a scenario wanting to have. This is something that they feel that they have to have. It's not something they put on their bucket list. So to treat women like that tells me what you think of women in general. Even if you, and I've had these conversations with men who seem to think that they respect women. I'm sorry, if you're telling women what kind of health care is right for them without knowing their situation, then no, you don't respect women. And I'm sorry to tell you this, but you possibly even hate women because they might actually, not think that listening to you is a priority, especially if it's someone they don't know. Because, yes, if you're involved with this woman, if you're in this woman's life, and if this pregnancy affects you, you can talk to this woman and try and work something out. But at the end of the day, it's still her decision, because she's the one who would have to go through this. As much as you want to help her, she still is the one who's pregnant. So at the end of the day, it's going to be her choice and her choice alone. It's great if you can have a conversation with her because this is something that affects you and you can go over the pros and cons with her. But at the end of the day, she gets to decide what is growing in her body. because she's the one who's going to have to deal with the changes. She'll be the one who would know that, oh, I have a history of such and such. I don't want to deal with such and such. So I'm going to just not, I never wanted to get pregnant, and that's the reason for medical issues. So the best thing to do is to have an abortion before it gets to the point where I'm on death's door or whatever. But that's not for anybody else to decide. The woman decides it, the doctor decides it. Like I said, if you're involved with this woman, you can discuss it with her. But at the end of the day, the woman is the one who decides what she is able to deal with. Whether it's because of the pregnancy, whether it's being a mother, whether it's financial, whatever the reason is that she decides that she's not ready to be pregnant. Because obviously the mother think, well, adoption is a thing. But if there's something about being pregnant that she doesn't feel like this is something that she can go, which I might add, financial is still a thing even if she opts for adoption, because being pregnant is not cheap. It's not a freebie. So just dealing with the financials of being pregnant is a valid concern. So financial reasons, emotional reasons, medical reasons, these are all things that you have to take into account. And only the woman fully understands where she is in all of those areas. The people around her might understand some, but they don't necessarily understand completely her entire mentality. Not even her doctor knows all of it, but he or she can at least give her guidance, give her options. And at the end of the day, it's for the woman to decide what's best for her, because she's the one who has to live with that decision, not anybody else. Anyway, I've rambled on long enough, so I will see you in the next video.